Hello everyone, it's Jason here. We're here with W3 Wisdom, a show where we're going to be interviewing and chatting with old friends, industry colleagues and some of the wisest people I've ever had the privilege to work with. And tonight, an old dear friend, Mikkel DeMib Svendsen from Copenhagen, or in Denmark, I'm not sure if he's actually in Copenhagen and Sydney at the moment. He's going to be joining me and we're going to be chatting about the last 20 odd years of our industry of SEO. Now, if I press this button, I'm hoping, and I press it, that's the wrong one. And that's the wrong one as well. I'm ballsing this up already, I am. Mikkel, I got it wrong. There we go. We're live. I fucked it up already. I got it wrong. Mikkel, hi. Thanks for joining us here on W3 Wisdom. Mikkel's an old friend. So, Mikkel, say hello to Facebook land.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me, Jason. Good to be back on the show together.
Well, indeed. It's been a few years since we did shows together, but we were I was very privileged that you asked me to join you on the fabulous Strike Point.
Yeah, that was a fun time.
Yeah, it was, which was Webmaster Radio by Darren and Brandy, and they were great times. Great times.
It was indeed.
And we did them. Was it every Thursday? I can't remember.
Monday.
There we go. Years have aged on. I've got the extra wrinkles and grey hairs. My memory's not what it used to be. But we're doing this again, but we're doing it here on Facebook, and we're doing it with video instead of just audio as we were back then. Webmaster Radio was groundbreaking back then, and I don't know if we're groundbreaking now, rather than standing on their shoulders of greatness. But here, Mikkel, for those that don't know you, I've known you for many, many, many years. I'm going to say, well over a decade, probably closer to 2. I can't quite remember when we first met or spoke. But Mikkel, you've worked in the search industry for how long now?
It's getting close to 20 years, I think. 97 or something that I started out doing work with search, and then I would think sometime next year is probably 20 years.
We're close to the 2-decade anniversary.
Well, we're getting old.
we are, Mikkel. We're getting no younger. But I know that when I started all those many years ago, I never believed that we could fast forward 20 odd years in the future and would still be working in this industry. But hey, that's where we are. I work in search engines and algorithms and geeky data stuff every day, and I know that you do with your company. Mikkel, for those that are listening, can you tell us how you started off in the search industry? I think it was Lycos, am I right in saying that?
No, it was actually before that. It was the early days of the web, and I think like many other people, I was just fumbling around, and then I stumbled on the challenge of why are some websites ranking in the search engine we had back then, Excite and this stuff, and I couldn't figure it out, and I found out that nobody really knew anything about it, at least in my close area, and I started trying to find out if anybody knew anything, and there was a few people around, mostly in the US and a few in the UK at that time, and that kind of awakened my curiosity, and I think that was what drove me into that. At that point, I was working at a web agency, just building websites, very, very old school type of simple coding. I was never a really good programmer, but you could actually get a job as a programmer back then when
I remember those days
with my very limited skills in that area. And but then I always had a passion for doing things that nobody knows anything about, and so search was obvious. Back then there was so many areas of the web that nobody knew anything about, so it was quite easy to find a niche and jump into it, and it was just, one thing took the other. And in 98, I wrote my first book about search optimization. And I think it was 99 or 2000. Danny invited me to the first one of the first conferences. The first one in
Danny Sullivan.
Danny Sullivan, of course. And then for many years, of course, I was doing more and more conferences every year. I wrote a few more books. Did forums, and as you mentioned in the beginning, we did a lot of radio shows on Webmaster Radio. I think we started out in 2005. And along all that way, of course, I developed different services and tools and agencies, but also as one of the few, I guess, in the SEO business, I always also worked on the other side of the fence, so to speak.
And that's really interesting. I'd love to learn more about your current agency, but we'll come on to that. But before we do, tell me about what it was like when you were working on the other side of the equation, when you were part of the search engine itself.
Yeah, well, it came around as very early, actually, I think 2001 or something, that I was offered a job as a general manager of a search engine called Waimea, which at the point was the second biggest in Scandinavia. And that was a very interesting time, learning how to operate a search engine, learning how to satisfy search users, basically, and the challenges of that, and of course the very early days of fighting spammers.
It's funny that you say about fighting spammers, because
we did, of course, because at that point I already did work as an SEO, so I did have a very different perspective on that. For instance, we were the first search engine, I guess, in the world that made a very liberal cloaking policy.
Yeah.
Back then, it was basically a very simple policy. We said we don't disallow cloaking, but if you do cloaking, we consider you a professional. So if you do it in a way that serves users well, which cloaking, of course, can do, because at that time we had a lot of flash websites and things like that you couldn't get indexed. And by cloaking those flash sites, you could actually give my search users access to great content. So in a way, cloaking could be good. So we said, if you do cloaking, you're a professional, and then you have a special responsibility. So if you do it in a way that makes the experience for our search users better, fine, we won't do anything. But if you fuck it up, then we will destroy you, because you're professional.
With that ban hammer.
Damn. Then we're going to ban all your IPs, and we did actually do that very, very hard. We worked at that point closely together with Fast Search and Transfer in Norway, which was. Many people forget that today, but they were
actually a great search engine. It was fantastic.
In the early days, they were way ahead of Google in many ways.
Yeah.
Fast, actually, there was a funny story, because I remember I had a meeting with Google in, I think it was maybe 2002 or 3 in California, and at that point, remember then, that was back when Google only updated once a month.
Yes.
I remember
every month.
I remember Daniel Doolitz, who was the engineer that did the update. He said, "Well, if I have a vacation, it's every 6 weeks. If I'm working really hard, it's every 4 weeks." But at that point, it became more and more obvious that updating once a month was not good enough. Let's imagine that they updated today and tomorrow the president got shot. Then it would take 30 days before there was anything in Google about it, and that was too slow. So I had this meeting with about a lot of things. We were just picking each other's brains, basically, at Google, and I was kind of teasing them a little bit about this updating circle thing, and I asked them, why do you not do incremental updating? And they were like, oh, but that's not possible. We have such a huge index. You cannot just, shoot in new records into such a huge index. And which, of course, from a datalogical point of view is really, really difficult. But then I kind of laughed about them a little bit and said, do you realize that Fast Search and Transfer is actually doing this now? They just started doing incremental updating, and then the engineers at Google were like, and then actually a few months later, Google started doing incremental updating too. I guess they got
Fast
they got
Search was it was an amazing search engine. I loved it.
They had really good technology.
They ended up being bought by Alta Vista. Is that right? If I remember rightly.
Yeah, and eventually, of course, by Yahoo. Yeah. So, which is another, of course.
Another relic of the past, now just been sold for $4.8 billion to Verizon in the US, the cell phone company. And wow, great heights they were, and the opportunities they missed. But look,
but then I had a couple of years with managing search, and it was very interesting. Also, being part of Waimea was part of a portal, and having that conflict that eventually, in my mind, killed Alta Vista and killed Yahoo and killed so many other search engines. The balance between, on one side, having a portal where you want to keep visitors, you want to keep them on your portal and don't send them out, and then having a search engine which purpose is to send out people to other websites.
Exactly.
And I think to begin with, that was how Google killed the other search engines, because they were just a pure search engine. They didn't want to keep people on their site. They wanted to serve them good links to other websites and send them out there. But ironically enough, Google is actually now, in my point of view, facing that same strategic challenge and problem as Yahoo originally had, because Google is becoming a portal. Google, there's one part of Google that want to be an answer machine and want to keep people there, want you to use Google Mail and Google blah, 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 everything, and don't want to send you away from the Google properties because they make money on display ads. On the other hand, there's still a search engine. And I know that there must be this struggle going on inside Google where you have the search people that want to do great search, and then you have the application people that want to have people staying on Google. And so they're eventually now opening up, in my mind, themselves to be attacked from someone that just make pure great search.
So Mikkel, do you truly believe that a new entrant in search could launch and deliver greater, sensible market share and compete with Google?
Yeah, of course.
See, I'm not sure I agree with you, and we normally do agree. Let's be honest here. I think that building an algorithm that's as good as Google or potentially better is easy to. Well, I say easy. It's a relative term, but it's well within the ability of many. I think I could do it if I had enough time and the resources, but I don't think that. I believe that Google are that far ahead that it is nigh on impossible for someone to try and replicate the success they've had and to gain a significant market share. Bing, Microsoft, MSN, call it what we want under the various names over the years. They've tried. They succeeded at the algorithm. The results are actually really quite good, but they've got no market share whatsoever.
Actually, Bing is growing. So they are growing.
It's growing, and it is on the extent to that.
Yeah, of course. But they're also making huge mistakes, and they're not doing what I would do. But it's of course it's a long discussion. But yes, I do think that Google can be challenged, and I think they're opening themselves up more and more to that challenge. But the thing is that for anybody whoever wrote or whoever read, in my mind, the best marketing book ever written, Marketing Warfare. Think about one little snippet of that book, talking about how you should attack your competitors, the weakness that is attached to the success they have, not just the weakness in general, but the one that's attached to their success. And in Google's case, of course, it is the growth. They're becoming a portal, and they have this dilemma of wanting on one side to keep users on their side, and on the other side of it, trying to be a search engine. And I think you could attack them by being a search engine, just like Google did with Yahoo 15 years ago.
Mikkel, let me dive in there. We've got at least two competitors I can think of, and others that have gone by the wayside. We've got Bing at the moment that's effectively replicating Google in very similar ways to what we're doing with the multiple products and services. But we've also got DuckDuckGo. Now, that's not a bad search engine, but again, they've been attacking Google on the privacy and the data retention side rather than the portal aspect. But again, they're primarily minuscule, although again, growing. Do you think?
But I don't think you cannot attack on privacy because that's a geeky thing. Most people don't concern themselves about that. You and I concern ourselves about it, and there's some geeky people that concern themselves about it, but the general public don't. Okay. No, they go, with the idea of we have nothing to hide, so you can track us because it doesn't matter. Sure. So no, I don't think that's too geeky to attack, and that's not how you're going to get it.
So you believe, Mikkel, that having a core and wonderful search algo and only delivering search rather than all the other services is the way to beat Google?
No, not necessarily. It's one way, but I mean, we discussed this for years, of course, ever since Google got such a huge dominance in search. Who could ever challenge Google? I think there are multiple players that could do that. Another angle on it, and that's already happening in some way now, is I argued for many years, and I think the biggest and most obvious challenger to Google would be Amazon. If Amazon decided,
I agree completely with you, Mikkel.
And in some way they're already doing it. I do believe that Amazon is having as much or even more e-commerce searches than Google. So not attacking on a broad scale, but attacking on a specific type of search, and of course, commerce search is a very obvious
I agree. Let me say that I agree with you. Amazon as a search engine, which if you remember is powered by A9, which for a while was a standalone search engine. You know, A9 is, if you go back far enough, I can't remember when, but it was launched by Amazon as a search engine. Now they integrated it for their core search within Amazon.com, the different country versions that they've got. It's an amazing product, Amazon. It's a machine and a monster as big as Google as the technical side, and that their searching is great. And I do believe that if you're to add Amazon and eBay together as an example, I know they're not going to ever. I doubt they're ever going to merge. But if you
I was thinking about that.
But if you did add them together, an account of products, search that lead to sales, etc., I'm sure they're higher than Google are right now, and probably ever will be. Amazon and eBay together have owned the e-commerce space, at least in the Western world.
And actually, it's been Google's own argument. As you know, there's a case led by a former Danish minister, a case against Google for abusing their monopoly, and it's actually Google's own argument that we don't have a monopoly because on certain verticals like e-commerce search, there are other players like Amazon that are actually bigger than us.
Exactly.
So Google is using it as an argument.
They are. However, they're doing that arguably to preserve their self. Do they truly believe that they're not as good as Amazon, they're not as good as eBay? But I do think they do have competition in some e-commerce areas. I do think Amazon, I do think eBay. I do think we can say there's other country versions, whether it were to be that Baidu in China and Rambler in Russia, etc., and others that are out there. But the reality is, in the majority of Western Europe, in the majority of North America, they are the search engine of choice. And if you look around the world as a whole, they own pretty much every damn click that there is to be gained or delivered by search engines. So what I'm not sure about is how someone will beat them, unless, and this is where I'm going to go back to something you were saying before, they themselves created a great search engine and were also great SEOs and could fill the Google SERPs with their own search pages within there, so that the change would come slowly. When you search on Google, you'd end up on another search engine as the top result, and then you'd build that brand in that other search engine. Eventually you'd bypass Google. But here's something we were talking about before, which was the cloaking. To enable cloaking, you said that when you were working with the search portal, the search engine back then, you said that it was good many times for good webmasters to cloak, and it's just not something that's done very well or at all nowadays by SEOs. Do you think that cloaking and using that to get content into the index, while still delivering a great experience to the consumer who's ultimately going to end up there, do you think that's something that still has its place in modern day SEO?
Not as much as there used to be. Because first of all, we got rid of most of the flash sites, so we don't have that problem. And of course, a lot more content is now actually indexable. So a lot of the reasons for using cloaking has gone. Another thing is that because of course that linkage is so much more important than it ever has been. It's difficult to have URLs that nobody can actually see and have them getting the right links to it, and also as user engagement is also becoming more and more important. Of course, you're not getting user engagement on that type of stuff, and so all in all, I think it's a combination of being more. It's a different set of parameters that make up good SEO today, and also the challenges are different. So I don't think that's probably still a good use of it some places. And the funny thing is, I do actually know a few that still operate cloaking sites. And one thing that hasn't changed is maybe actually it's less of a problem now is that Google don't tend to identify any of it.
Yeah, indeed.
And I think I had a big discussion with some of the engineers at Google some years ago. I think actually it was also Daniel Dulitz that was behind that. He claimed that they made a anti-cloaking software. And I was kind of laughing at him because I said, even you have no talent because it's not working, or you're lying because it's not there.
Exactly. Now,
and I think it's pretty much the same today.
It's an old
Because
saying for our industry.
as both you and I know, it's virtually impossible to do a good decloaking software because it's all about intent. Because what's the difference between cloaking and personalization? It's
and geolocation and everything that goes with that. Yeah.
So and I think that with user engagement data and a lot of other stuff, intent can be identified in other ways than looking for cloaking. So I don't think it's so relevant anymore.
No, I agree. But here, one of the things that you said that I thought was very funny, but also reminds me, the old phrase of FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt, which is something that Google and the search engine media press who are out there have been very good at propagating, is it's cheaper to instill fear into an SEO that something they do might be bad, rather than creating an algorithm that will actually take care of those issues. Now, I don't know what you think, but so I'm going to ask you, is there still that problem of the search engine media, the press who are out there, whether it be the websites, the blogs, giving that bad information and telling us that, look, what the search engines are doing, you must do this, you must do that. What do you think there's good reporting nowadays are out there?
No, it's actually getting worse, I think, and unfortunately, not only the main media and normal journalists, which of course to some degree is excused because they don't know much about search and technology, but also a lot of our industry friends, I would say, websites and blogs that used to be really good, they allow guest posts and maybe even do post themselves that, in lack of a better word, is pure bullshit. And that kind of worries me. I know I'm not the only one that have been pointing out that blogs and websites that we all used to follow, and there was actually good websites, are full of stuff that at least I would question. Just to give you one good example, you know how much I love Danny Sullivan and Chris Sherman. I think they've done so much. They're great guys and they've done so much work. And of course, they're not monitoring every piece of content that goes on their website. But just today on Search Engine Land, there was an article about Google now fueling AMP pages into main search results, which of course is a legitimate news, a piece of news. That's fine. But as part of that was a quote from Google saying that AMP pages is 4 times faster than normal mobile optimized pages. And they didn't question that. They didn't ask for data. And that, in my mind, is pure bullshit. Maybe Google is right that the average AMP page is 4 times faster than the average mobile optimized page. But it's not true that AMP pages are faster than mobile pages. It's just because a lot of coders, a lot of web agencies are making really crappy websites.
I agree.
That are very. But if you optimize your mobile web pages, and I actually demonstrated this in a presentation in London earlier this year, if you optimize your mobile pages as good as it's actually possible today, they can be as fast or even faster than AMP pages. A lot of the pages we're currently building. And a lot of other good agencies, not just our agency, but a lot of good agencies are building. The websites we recently built have been as fast as 1/5 of a second, and that is for the full load of everything, rendering images, everything. That's that's faster than most AMP pages, I would claim.
Let's come back to this. We're going to dive off very quickly for an ad break, but we'll be back and let's carry on that discussion just then. This is Fred. He's a busy SEO. But Fred hates link building. And outsourcing it is too expensive, low quality and time consuming. Fred needs an answer. A scalable link solution. The domain name has just the thing. Fred wants powerful domains, scalability, great prices, speed of action, and huge data. Whether 10, 1,000 or 1 million sites, you choose your domains. Add them, and then in 24 hours or less, your network is complete. It's that simple. Exclude the bad words, include the good, and just search. Then click. Through an easy interface that's quick to use, with vast data. It's a network in a flash. It's the fastest link building program available. It's truly international and the final cog in your SEO machine, saving you money, building your profit, and launching your business to the moon. It's a thumbs up from Fred. Come sign up now with a special offer with a free trial. And we're back. Thank you everyone for bearing with us while we had that ad break. Just to remind you, we're honoured to have with us today Mikkel DeMib Svendsen, all the way from Denmark, a second person from Denmark this week actually. Copenhagen's where is Denmark's based. Is where Mikkel's based in Denmark, and he's one of the owners and directors at Waimea Digital. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Waimea.
Waimea, I'm sorry. Which is,
It's okay.
Which is truly one of the premier agencies over there in Denmark. So if anyone needs any assistance in their SEO or full service agency style work, Mikkel is definitely the person that you should be speaking to. But Mikkel, we were speaking just before about some of the FUD and the bullshit that's out there and the quality of our industry press. Not necessarily any particular site or any individual, but as a whole, the quality seems to have dropped. And statements are slipping through that aren't always true. We spoke earlier about cloaking, as it wasn't allowed back in the day. Google would never give a formal answer as to whether you should or you can or you can't. Whereas we know that the reality was that big guys got away with it and small guys didn't, especially when it was used in that personalised way, or geolocation, which was just cloaking. Then we moved on to things like AMP pages, and I think you're completely correct in what you were saying, that a well-coded mobile website can be as fast or faster than an average AMP page. The AMP pages aren't necessarily the be-all and end-all that are being promoted by Google. But let me ask you, what other crap is out there? What works? What do we know assists rankings nowadays? Yet is frowned upon by many blogs or websites or the media. This is there for our search engine industry.
Well, just going a few steps back first, I think there are two types of bullshit from the Google PR machine, and they're very good at that.
They are.
I must give them that. One thing is the scare straight stuff, as we talked about, instead of actually fixing problem, trying to scare people into doing what benefit them as a search engine. I don't think that's actually the biggest problem now. They do that occasionally if they have big embarrassing cases of websites that got away with spam. Then they suddenly update the algorithm and magically remove it. Yep. We all know they didn't do that, but it still works in the general press. But what I actually find more disturbing is that Google is pushing, and not just Google, but primarily Google is pushing standards that they claim work. I mean, recently Google came out with a statement saying you shouldn't be so concerned with having multiple versions of your websites in different on different domains, because we can sort it out, no problem. And from Google's point of view, it's right, they do sort it out, yeah. But a lot of times they sort it out in a way that hurt your business. But the thing is that what most people forget, and the general press forget, is it's not Google's job to run your business. So there's really nothing wrong in what they're saying. It's just only one perspective of it. I actually had, back when Matt Cotts was still in Google, I had a great discussion with him on a panel I think it was in Chicago, where we talked about that along the road, SEOs and search engines can agree on a lot of things. We want more people to use search. We want more happy people to use, more clicks generated, and all that stuff. We can agree on that. But then we come to a certain point where we do not agree, because let's say, just for the argument, I used this example before, but let's say just for the argument that you have a shoe shop and I have a shoe shop, and they're equally good, from an objective point of view.
Yep.
From Google's point of view, it doesn't really matter if you're number one or I'm number one.
Exactly.
But from my point of view, it does. I want to be number one, even if your shoe shop is a little bit better than mine, because that's marketing, And Google's job is not to promote my site. Google's job is to make sure that their search users get a good experience. And from their point of view, it doesn't really matter if it's your web shop or my web shop.
And I think
that's where the difference is. And that's why also we have to look at, I discussed this so many times with especially with web agencies that have the same, have clients that we do SEO work for. And they come to me and say, for instance, about duplicate content, which is an increasing problem. They come to me and say, oh, but Google say we should just implement canonical tags and everything is fine. And then, I don't know how much you experienced this, but we actually had 3 major cases with big US sites, actually e-commerce sites, that had perfectly implementation of canonical tag, and yet many of those pages got indexed in Google and even Bing because Google make mistakes. And that's fair enough, because I think at the current time, I think Google is indexing 1,000, 2,000 billion sites or some pages, something like that.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous number, and of course they make mistakes. That's fair enough. But when they make mistakes, you pay for it, not Google. It's your website that is hurting in search results. So what I'm trying to tell these clients is, let's try and make a more solid server-based solution instead of a client-based solution that is dependent on passing certain tags on the page, because that can fail. If instead we implement a server-based solution where we control the environment and there's nothing to be interpreted, a solid solution, then it works all the time. It's a more secure solution. I have these discussions all the time, but Google tend to be pushing these, what I often call band-aid solutions, that, you don't actually fix the problem, but you put a band-aid on top of it,
sure.
which a canonical tag is a good example of. Of course, it's better to use a band-aid than, I use the analogy to like cutting yourself. If you cut yourself and it's bleeding and you're about to die, it's better to use a band-aid, of course, than dying. But it's even better not to cut yourself. So instead of creating a website full of duplicate content and then just putting canonical tag on top, because Google say that works, it's much better to create a website that doesn't have all this duplicate content in the first place.
No, I agree completely.
And I have huge discussions like this because Google is very good at promoting these things, and the agencies I work with, very often they forget this distinction between what it is Google is doing and what it is we are doing. And they say, oh, but why should Google lie? And I'm saying, they're not lying. They're just promoting their perspective of things. They're promoting their work to try and make a good search engine. They're not promoting my work to be a good marketing assistant for you.
And that's actually probably the most important thing I think anyone's ever said, is you need to understand the perspective, because they can be truthful and accurate, but not precise. And precision ensures that you look at all of the environments that you come from. And ultimately, as you said before, the shoe shops, 1 or 2 or 3 of them at the very top are all going to be great shoe shops. Yeah. But the difference between position 3 and position 1 from a business point of view is extortionate. It's huge. Yeah. And so pushing that forward with those few extra links that you may well gain is the difference between having a successful business or one that may struggle.
It's not very different from public relations. It's the same thing. What do the newspapers write about? Do they write most about my business because my business is the best, or do they write most about my business because I have a really good PR agent? Exactly. And we both know, the true answer to that.
Exactly. I think, let me be clear, I think your business is actually very good. But you also have a good PR agency as well. And that's what SEOs are. They're about utilising the modern equivalent of a PR agency, that being Google, but in a form that plays with no traditional rules or individuals to interact with. It's an algorithm. And most SEOs nowadays understand the algorithm quite well. Content that's good enough, hopefully great, but at least good enough. And links. Links seem to help. They have since the days before Google, and will continue to, I believe, for the foreseeable future, as far as the future as we can imagine. I think the bigger issue that Google may have is Facebook. who are that ultimate portal, as we were talking about just before. But they're not a true search engine. I think Apple could take them.
No.
I think Amazon and eBay, if they were to join, all of those things were to come together. But here we are. We're today. We're not in the future. We're not in the past. We want to rank now. Links seem to still be the dominant metric, and if you have enough of the right kinds, that they'll defeat all that come before them, even if the quality is subpar, even if the competition are better. So, how?
What?
Sorry, Mikkel, go ahead.
No, but I would say that another thing that has changed a lot is, some people eat up to the argument that SEO has become more and more difficult and blah blah blah. I actually think it's quite the opposite. I think SEO has become much easier, but it's just not done right for most websites. I mean, I remember in the early days, and people talked about, well, SEO is not like rocket science, and one of our old friends, Aaron Wall, he actually used to work in rocket science, and he said, no, SEO is much more difficult because in rocket science you have rules. You have tables.
The rules
you
don't change.
Yeah. There are rules of physical behavior and all this kind of stuff, and you can look it up. And with SEO in the early days, there was no rules. There was no table. There was no facts. We were all just experimenting, walking around in the dark. But today, SEO is very much like rocket science. We know how to do things. You have to make a mobile-friendly, super fast website. With great content and some good linkage, of course, a decent user engagement and so on. We know all the facts. And that's what makes me really sad is that I do a lot of, or we do in our agency, a lot of SEO analysis. That's typically the way that we start up with a client. We do a full-scale SEO analysis, sure. 120 pages of details, and we go through everything on all these aspects of a website. And it strikes me again and again and again that even the best agencies, and I looked at websites from a lot of different agencies in Denmark and abroad. I have not met one that have more than half of the things done right. They are either slow, they're not totally search friendly. None of them have schema.org implemented or social media tagging.
But hold on, Mikkel, let me butt in here.
And the thing is, that is the community of developers that have always screamed and shouted about having open standards. And here you have them. You have schema. You have social media tag. They're standards. They've been around.
I agree with you. But if you rank number one, what's the point of putting the extra work in? Because you can't go any higher. If the competition aren't deploying
they don't. I mean, a lot of times this is businesses that pay a fortune for these big agencies to build their website, and the agencies claim we know exactly what to do, and then they turn the website over to me for analysis, and they score 20 on Google PageSpeed.
Sure.
They never have full schema implementation, and if they do, there's always errors. Not to talk about hreflang, there's always errors with that. Yeah. And they have all these, and they don't have social media tagging, and there's so many basic things. And this is rocket science because you can look it up.
Exactly.
These are standards.
I agree. We're in agreement, Mikkel. We agree with each other. Here.
There's really no excuse or no good reason why a good web programmer or web agency should not implement schema.
Okay, but we know, just like there are good drivers, there are good SEOs, good web designers, but there's bad for all of those as well. And the majority may well be bad, and the quality is reduced overall. There are very few SEOs who are still working in the trenches day to day, like you and me, who have been around back in those days when you test, before there was the sort of manual to deliver the work that you do. Most people now learn and have been doing it for a year or two and think they have immense experience. I think that isn't the reality. That testing days have gone. They'll come back. Algorithms will change dramatically, and then those days will come back, and those guys that have been working, and girls who have been working just doing the same things day in, day out as a process they'll vanish away. But until that happens, surely market forces, and that market forces will rule, and the ones that do the great work will gain more work, or their prices will go up, so they can't take it all. But there is still a need for more SEOs. And so that says to me that we haven't hit that pinnacle yet, and we likely won't until there is major algorithmic changes. So that brings us almost full circle again. If Google doesn't change their core algorithm that much, and they haven't, in my opinion, it's still content and links. Everything else is still there. But that's the major thing. What is going to be the change that delivers a revolution in search, whether it be a new company, a new algorithm, a combination of all the things?
I do think that Google have changed, and not only Google, but very obviously Google have changed some things. And I think the one area, I've been talking about this for at least the past 3 or 4 years, is user engagement data. Yes. I think that's a relatively new thing. Of course, they've been using clickstream data for many years. They've been tracking clicks from search result pages for many years, and that of course is a very good indication of quality. But I think with increasing data that they got primarily through Chrome. Have you ever, by the way, read the full terms of service for Chrome?
A long while ago, I have actually, yes, but they've got like my firstborn children.
It's actually typical American. It's actually a 4-level nested terms of service, and if you print out everything, I actually did that a few times when it's presentation and rolled out. It's 78 pages long when you print it out with very small letters, and it basically say there. I read it all. It basically say there that they have the right to take all your data and use it whatever way they want.
But if you remember,
and they have with the huge users of Chrome, they have tons of very, very valuable data. And of course, you and I know everything can be manipulated. But having said that, user engagement data is a lot more difficult to manipulate than linkage data and content and technical factors and so on.
Yes,
because
to a degree.
Yeah, but especially it's difficult when you want to scale it up. Yep, because it's difficult to fake user engagement on Amazon.com,
Exactly.
Because
you need to spend a lot of money to buy the product. Yeah.
So and actually, in to some degree, for Amazon.com, it's probably easier to actually make that, and they've done that to a large extent. It's actually probably easier to make the usability better and make the engagement better than trying to fake it, because it's such a huge scale. But I think user engagement data have just started now, and I think once they understand to better use that, and I have a very strong feeling that they are testing the waters here. We've seen a few examples from large e-commerce sites in Denmark where they went from one design to another, and user engagement dropped, rankings dropped exactly the same time. When they went back to a different design with better user engagement, the rankings came back. I've seen so many correlations like that in the past few years, that I'm pretty sure that user engagement is going to be a bigger factor. One of the challenges from an SEO point of view that I do see with this is that, first of all, right now we are back at the more than rocket science difficult level, because we don't know exactly what Google is doing with it now, for sure. So, but the other two things that makes it really difficult is that with all the other data, we can benchmark it against our competitors, but with user engagement data, we normally don't have access to that data from our competitors. So we have not that. I mean, with links, we could look at how many links and what kind of link competitors have, but with user engagement data, that's a very different thing. So that makes it difficult. But what I'm trying to tell my clients is that most of user engagement data that we try to optimize is also what conversion optimizers are looking at. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And so even if it didn't work in Google, wouldn't you like to optimize your user engagement? I mean, if you have an e-commerce site, optimizing it makes total sense.
Mikkel,
even if people didn't look at it.
We're in complete agreement. Look, a number one ranking, for whatever the term may be, is just a guide towards the ultimate metric. And the ultimate metric is the number that the ATM machine tells you when you say, what is my balance? And to get to that level, it comes down to sales of a product or a service, or advertising, selling of eyeballs. And so that is the metric that matters. And all of the things in the way are guides towards that. How the users use the site is a guide towards your ultimate metric of sales. How they get there on the rankings is a guide before they get an earlier stage, before they get the conversion optimization and the relationship that they have on site. So we're in agreement. All of those areas should be taken care of. But is that enough to deliver change? We've had change over here in the UK. We're going to be leaving Europe. I'm annoyed because I didn't want that. But half the nation, just over half the nation, voted against me. There's change happening in America. We've got a likelihood, or about half the country wants a racist bigot, in my opinion, to lead them as they go forward into the next part of their history of the country. The world is different to what it was 10, 20 years ago. Algorithms are changing as well, but not dramatically. Is that the right way to deliver the short-term wins? It's the right way to deliver the long-term wins. If you don't survive the short-term, how do you ever get to the long-term? So if we were building, back in the days when we were spamming, let's be honest here, we were spamming, we were taking those rankings and taking short-term money. But one thing we learnt was, if you work for the short-term, and short-term and short-term, they added up to become medium-term and eventually long-term. So we ended up with long-term businesses, but we were always working towards the short-term goals. Is that still valid nowadays? Should we be looking for the short-term and the quick wins, or should we be looking at a long journey?
It depends on what you're doing, as it always did. In Waimea Digital, we launched a product this summer, or early summer, late spring, that is aimed at small businesses. So basically what we do, given the fact that small businesses, they don't know much about the web, they do know that they need to be found in Google. If you want to find a hairdresser in Copenhagen, you search for hairdresser in Copenhagen, you don't go to Yellow Pages. They do know that. They're not stupid, but they don't know how to make it. Sure. And I'm sad to see that a lot of small businesses, they're being frauded. They because they don't have so much money. There's all these fraudulent companies that come around and take their small money, and they don't deliver. So basically, what we did, and also they don't have the time. They don't understand how to build a website. They don't have the time. Maybe they don't even have the skills to write or promote their stuff. They don't know anything about SEO except that they need to be found. So basically what we did with this product is that we take control of everything. We build the website, we create the content, and we do the marketing and everything. And because we can streamline this process, we can do it really, really cheap. And what we found out that is, if you do target on what is actually relevant for that, if you're a hairdresser in Copenhagen, it's not relevant to rank for hairdresser. It's relevant to rank for hairdresser in Copenhagen and similar terms for people that actually look for the business in the area that you are. And what we find out is that it's actually quite easy to rank for those things. If you do what is in the rocket science book, if you do make a website that's fast, if it is mobile friendly, if you do include schema and social media tagging and all those things, and you make your My Business registration, all those things, we know it's in the book. But the reason it's so easy to rank for those things is because the far majority doesn't do these basic things. and so for my and we have employed, of course, good engineers. We have journalists employed that actually write really good professional text, and of course SEOs that do that part of it. And what I found is that if you do these very basic things, because they're all in the book, do them and you do them right, then you can actually deliver both short and long term really good results. Quite cheap for those kind of companies.
Mikkel.
But of course, it's difficult if you're selling Viagra or you want to.
I agree. We're in agreement. We're in agreement.
That's a totally different game.
Okay, Mikkel. Look, we're coming up towards the end now. I want you to give an advert out for your domain where people can find your services, especially small businesses in Denmark. Yeah. Where can we find you online? On
waimea.dk, Waimea. .dk.
So waimea.dk, waimea.dk.
Yeah, and if you're English, you can go to /eng, and we just have one page up now. We're redesigning the website over the next couple of months, so there will be more English pages as well.
Well, look, Mikkel, it's been a pleasure and an honour to be speaking and doing this show with you again. I hope we can do it again at some time, because I've enjoyed every moment.
We have actually been talking about maybe doing a few more Strike Point radio shows, but and if you do, of course, I hope that you will join us there as well.
I'd love to join you there. You know I always will. I have a very soft spot in my heart
Yeah.
for everyone at Webmaster Radio, and of course yourself, Mikkel.
We
Now,
all-
it's been great. Thank you so much for your time. I agree with so much of what you say, Mikkel. It's silly, really, and it's been a really enjoyable time speaking with you again. But for now, I'm going to say we're over and out. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This is here on facebook.com, W3Wisdom. It will be available on YouTube and this video. If you didn't catch it live, tell everyone to come back within a matter of minutes. Facebook will do their magic and you can watch the replay. So, Mikkel, thank you for your time. It's been an honour. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.